Okay, well, this next one comes from Moses, and I think this is a tough one.
Hello, fathers. My name is Moses Reese. I'm from Portland, Oregon. I have a question about the body and gender. In your episode, God's Body, you define the body as a nexus of potentialities. In the recent episode, Prophet Motive, there's some references made to individuals accessing spiritual forces from the liminal between gender state, or sometimes being thrust out of a gender state as a result of exposure to spiritual forces. In my work as a professional counselor, I've sometimes talked with trans and non-binary individuals who describe the experience of their internal sense of gender being incongruent with their body to some degree. They describe an energy, craving a different sort of body, and this incongruence can be mild or extreme, but centers on how they experience their bodies. So then, what is the potentiality of a male body versus female body? And is it strictly or primarily reproduction, or is there more? What is the essential nature of man or woman? Is the essential nature of man or woman that they have particular genitalia, or is the essence of manhood or womanhood something deeper and intangible? And if the essence of gender is in fact connected to particular genitals, then what does that say about the overall nature of a person? Is our essential nature bound up in organs of elimination and reproduction, and is this possibly reductionistic? More so, if the essence of manhood, womanhood is bound up in the genitalia, then what does this say about the nature of God? On the other hand, if the essence of gender is not specifically tied to physical genitalia, but rather something internal, inherent, and transcending physical flesh, then what is actually problematic about a trans or non-binary person's experience, journey, and physical alterations to their body? That's my question. Thanks so much for the show. It makes being a Christian a whole lot more fun. Peace.
Okay, well, yeah, I think this is a tough one because there's so many potential minefields and pitfalls, that can go along with it. And I think often, and I appreciate the spirit with which, Moses, you asked this question because, you're concerned about the care of people, right? Whereas a lot of times when people ask questions related to now this very, very hot question of gender, it's about justifying, frankly, sexual immorality or all kinds of other very problematic behaviors. I mean, we've talked many times on this show about this question of identity becoming, like one's personal identity, like I'm different from everybody else for the following list of reasons that together make me unique, as being a very problematic way to live. And that at least is some of the way that I think about this stuff. But I'll be honest, I don't have a lot of really big formed thoughts about how to understand this. I have very clear thoughts about the right kinds of behavior, but I don't yet have fully worked out ideas about necessarily how we get there. So, Father, I'm just going to kick it over to you, and I want to hear what you have to say about this.
So, yeah, this is not a question of Father Andrew being chicken to really delve into this. It is that he does not share my reckless abandon, because I'm about to get everybody mad at me. Right. But we'll see. We'll see if this actually makes it out onto Ancient Faith's airwaves and you listen to it, and I have not made you mad in any way, send an email. So I'll be curious to see if there's anyone out there. So part of, again, we have to start by interrogating the question a little, because, as we said before, sort of the way you start an inquiry is going to shape the results you get.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's something that happened, right? There were important distinctions that were made in the late mid 20th century that have kind of been lost now and are part of what's causing a lot of this confusion. And one of the big ones, and here's where I'm going to tick off a bunch of people right off the bat, is that there's a difference between biological sex and gender.
Right.
That those aren't the same thing. So biological sex, right, is all organisms, right? If you're into the evolution thing, and humans are higher primates, right? They come in two biological sexes, male and female. There are also intersex people for various reasons, genetic issues, other things. There are people who physiologically don't conform to one of those two. Those are people who have their own set of issues they face and struggles they face. And I frankly find it kind of offensive when they're used as like a political football in these arguments. Okay, so the existence of intersex people literally has nothing to do with transgenderism. Because this is a question of biological sex, and transgenderism is about gender, which is a different thing.
Right.
Okay, so respectfully, out of respect for them, we need to leave them out of the rest of this discussion. Right. And when those people are in our churches and that kind of thing, we need to treat them with respect and help them with their struggles the same way we would anyone else. Right. But so that's a separate kind of issue. So gender then, right. And part of this gets confused too, because we're speaking English, right? In pretty much every other language I've ever studied, language has gender.
Right.
So different words are masculine and feminine. It has nothing to do with biology whatsoever.
Yeah.
Right?
And
the
there's
French people don't think tables are women.
Yeah. There's even neutral gender. And I think some languages have more than 3 actually. Grammatical gender, you know? Yeah.
And English doesn't have it. And so that makes pronouns radioactive now, because that's the only part of the English language that's really gendered is pronouns. Right. And we've all forgotten that we used to call ships she, right? You know? But so again, language gender is not related to this, right? So what's commonly called gender in these discussions is basically, this is, and I'm going to use another word, it's going to make another group of people mad at me. It's a social construct, meaning it's something that is constructed by a society in terms of this is the way males should dress, present themselves, speak, appear in public, right? And this is the way females should dress, present themselves in public. And obviously that's different in different cultures and different times, right? Like most of the Earth's history, men did not wear slacks or pants or jeans, right? That's now we consider masculine attire. Men didn't wear that for most of human history, right? If you saw someone dressed as Louis XV, you would not say there is a hyper masculine person, right? So that has changed, right? The founding fathers of the United States used to wear wigs and stockings, right? And high-heeled shoes. Men don't do that anymore in our current, right, cultural conception of gender. Okay? So there are people, right, who are men or women biologically who at any given point don't feel comfortable with the way their society tells them they should dress and act and present themselves, right? We didn't used to make a big deal out of this. Lots of women were tomboys in some period of their growing up, right? And they liked things that our culture associated with boys. They liked sports, or they liked playing with what we considered to be boys' toys. Not a big deal. That didn't make them a boy. It didn't make them a man. Why? Well, because that's just social construct. That has nothing to do with biology. Right? We were very clear this person is biologically this, right? They happen to like some things that in our society are more commonly liked by the other sex, right? So the other, in terms of ground clearing, the other issue here, and this even came out in the question a little bit, is that, and the questioner at least sounded like, you know, we're not allowed to assume anymore, but sounded like a man. And so he talked about genitalia. for men, it's very easy to talk about reproduction in terms of genitalia because that's how men are involved in reproduction. But for a woman, most of what's involved in reproduction is carrying a new human being in their womb for 9 months. And so the reproductive structures of the body, especially if we, as best I can, because I'm not one, look at it from a woman's perspective, is much more involved than just their organs of reproduction and elimination. That there is more involved here, and that's not sort of the end of physiological differences, right, between men and women. And so, when we say that a body is a collection of potentialities and powers, right? So obviously there are some of those that are different, right? A big, glaringly obvious one is that men don't have wombs, right? They can't conceive and carry a child for 9 months, right? That's a potentiality, that's a power that they do not possess and that women do possess. Again, that doesn't mean that every woman, right, possesses it, because we're in a fallen world where there are disorders of the body, right? Just as there are disorders of the soul, there's disease, there are problems where things don't work. But the structures, the physiological structures, are aimed at that, possessed by women and not by men. We've also said and tried to make clear that your soul is not a thing separate from your body. Your soul is the life that is in your body. You are your body. The resurrection is physical. After the resurrection, Christ is still a man. Right? His body is still a male body, a male human body.
Yep.
So that is, right, those structures, our physical structures are not sort of ancillary, right? We have to get past, this is a Plato brain thing, that our real self is this spherical thing inhabiting our body, and our body is coincidental, right? We are our body just as much as we are our soul.
Yeah, I feel like there's a Cartesian backing to a lot of this question, right? You know?
Right. And so in order for the transgender narrative to function, right, you have to take gender and make it not a social construct and make it real. You have to say if this person is biologically male, but they like She-Ra better than He-Man, so they're actually a girl or a woman, right? Meaning there is something essential about this cartoon as opposed to that cartoon, right? There's something and so you have to essentialize these things in a way that just does not work, right? That just does not work. That would be to say George Washington was secretly effeminate because wearing high heels and stockings and a wig is feminine no matter what, right? And makes him a female. So that doesn't work. So when we're talking to someone who identifies as trans, this isn't a person we should hate. This is a person who's confused, right? And part of the reason, frankly, that they've gotten confused is our modern sense of identity. And we have a whole generation of people now, really 2 generations of people now, whose first sexual experiences, whose only experiences of community have taken place on the internet, meaning they're disembodied. And we haven't taken into account what having all of a person's sexual experiences be disembodied does to a person when they're first developing their concept of sexuality and identity.
Yeah.
But we're seeing it play out, right? Because if you don't form your sense of identity in community, right, then your identity, if you're just talking about yourself, is a black hole. You end up in nihilism. Because by ourselves, we aren't human. We aren't anything. Aristotle knew that, right? If you're going to live by yourself, you have to be a beast or a god. And Nietzsche said, "Porque no los dos." But that's kind of a sort of. But you can't be human by yourself.
Right. Right.
So the solution to this is not to degrade people and insult people, insist on calling them things they don't want to be called in public to make some kind of point, right? That's not the solution. The solution is we have to work to rebuild communities so that people who have grown up without any concept of what it even is start to understand what community life is. And once you're in a community, your identity gets formed because you have a role within that community. You have gifts and abilities that you share with that community. And then in return, the community places certain responsibilities upon you. And you contributing what you can and fulfilling those responsibilities gives you a sense of self and a sense of self-worth and a sense of being appreciated. And that makes for a healthy person, right? But we can't argue at people out of this while they're sitting alone in their room in front of a computer. No matter what you post on Twitter, you're not going to convince anybody of anything, and you're not going to help them. And I know most of the people doing these things don't care about helping them because they've identified these people as the enemy in some kind of culture war, right? But our goal as Christians should be to help these people find salvation. And they're only going to find salvation in a community, specifically the community of the church. And that's where we start building these communities.
Yeah.
So there, now everyone's mad at me.
I don't know.
I'm happy.
Actually, I'm good with all of that.
Well,
yeah, I know.
You can answer the hate mail then.
Oh, yeah, I will. I have to be careful how I say this, but I've had experience with a young person, so a teenager who, it's like you said, this person was raised basically in front of a screen, and came to came to say, I'm not the actual sex that I was born. I'm the other one. And I thought about, I looked at that person's life and I thought about, well, okay. So in this case, it was a girl who said that she was a boy. And I looked at her life and I thought, well, she's never had a dad. Dad was out of the picture from a very, very early age and has been, at home for, either in public schools where a lot of those things are, let's be honest, a lot of public schools these days are totally happy with if someone says that kind of thing to say, okay, we will help you and support you to be that way and to help you go down that path as far as you want to go. That's just reality. And not getting anything different at home. Sort of realizing like, okay, this person actually doesn't even know what a man is. And they think, and, she thinks she is one, but there's nothing manly about her. Like literally there's nothing man, not even this kind of, gender stereotyping stuff, right? It was just sort of like an identification, like a switch was flipped. It's not like she started dressing differently or anything like that, but I think you're right. I mean, from my experience, this is the result of the fragmentation and the breakdown of human communities. And the place of sanity has to be the church. And like you said, that it can't be, that sanity is not simply giving people lectures about how they're wrong about stuff, but actually creating a community that they can plug into and enter into that web of relationships where who they are as God created them to be is meaningful and is something that they can actually connect to, because in many cases they haven't been able, and I'm sure, there's a lot of different kinds of experiences. The one that I happen to have interacted with this young lady, is not universal, I know, but the cure for this kind of stuff is a sane community where someone can plug into that and be part of it. It's always, it's always in isolation that we often in isolation, I should say, that we really, really go off the deep end and get in dangerous waters. So, all right. Well, I hope that's helpful to you, Moses, in your work. Okay, so this next one